So I want to begin with most of these poems I'm going to read are sort of new, and this is the second time I'm coming here to the gallery to read, so I thought it would be polite to bring new poems. So these have all been written in the last few months, and mostly concerning New York and events in our area, New Jersey, post-Sandy, rebuilding, that sort of thing, terrorism. So this is the happy, the uplifting turn in the reading series after Norman's, very happy. Thank you. All right. So, in the spirit of things, this is called Jumper. In reference to, you can use your imagination there. The planes from EWR sound like a chair being dragged through the hallway of the sky, to the parquet heights where someone can't quite reach a hat box full of letters or the penultimate star. Oh, to be in love. To be on a plane in love among the torpid angelic orders, looking down from the hindsight of 30,000 feet on all the strikes and public housing, on the Brooklyn street where my grandfather met Chuck Berry in a first-string all-American Cadillac, on all our problems that look so handsome in a certain light, glinting below us like dropped silverware. America, I'm not coming down. I've thought it all out, and I don't care much for your Holy Roman Congress or your bank holidays. Besides, your bars are closed, and all I've got for my trouble are these quaint guilders and a headache from the traffic. Do you know what it's like trying to cross the Hudson at this hour? You throw yourself a parade every night, and the cars, oh God, what cars, like phones ringing off the hook. And someday in Detroit, there'll be no one to pick up on account of the fire on the 9th floor. And so people in Tampa are on the horn waiting to hear someone tell them how bad they've been, how the lace negligee is coming off now. But instead they hear nothing. No flames or shrieks, but the white-hot beam of their own desire caving in on itself. I just want to go up there and put in my 12 hours at the Cloud Factory. I can almost hear the captain's voice on the Boeing, rising above all my work, filling the atmosphere with light and temperature, barometric readings, the whole bloody horoscope of the sleeping earth below. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a beautiful day. But instead I'm grounded on the careful math of this bridge, someone else's sweat and tears, writing a waltz with my shadow, Opus 12 for Gin and Scythe. The barge tosses and turns in West Bank visions. I step out over the edge of this madness and test my flight. It was a successful jump. On a humorous note, actually that's something of a true story. Not the jumping part, but the Chuck Berry, allegedly. My grandfather had a few beers once when I was painting a house with him, and he told me this story that he was on the street waiting for my grandmother to come out, and another Cadillac had pulled up alongside him, and Chuck Berry had leapt out of the car and started dancing in the street. Now, take from it what you will, mythology, poetry, whatever you have, but I'd like to think it happened in a worlds at some point. Chuck Berry dancing somewhere in Brooklyn. That's all you need, among all the Paps t-shirts and everything else that goes on. Okay, right, back to the laughs. This one's called View from Jersey City Heights. And, the rebuilding is going on, and what is done, not going on, is now done, of the tower. And this was written of the last few months when there was various stages of it being completed, and they're looking out from that high point into the skyline and what you could see. Over the quiet dignity of day, the newness, the fresh forgotten sound of metal and marble, of glass. Over the cries, the staunch skies moving westerly and blank. Someone is rising to meet you. Someone is playing Beethoven, and a minor key sadness falls in the rain beats, where the ground, like our history, begins to close. Maybe a curtsy or something every time we finish. I don't know what's appropriate. If I had sleeves, doves would come out, or something. A lion would be walking around us.
All it's going to take are sleeves?
Sleeves, that's right. If I only brought sleeves. My last words. If I only brought sleeves. This next one is called Police Report. And the laughs continue. This is about It's fictitious, so let me just say that because I get a lot of apologies after I read it about this robbery that didn't actually happen. So don't apologize to me or give me one of those blankets or anything that you put on someone after trauma. It didn't happen. It's all made up. And I've received emails a couple of times, people very seriously asking me if I was okay. Cards to therapists, that sort of thing. It's not necessary. It's all written on my walk with a briefcase out of the car after work one day. So here we are. Police report. He had me when I was ambling off the N train. Not long off when his hands tugged me to the ground, like news of my father's death, prying on the service ramp, a Nike duffel and the coat off my back. All this hell in the tunnel's twilight gas glow. Couldn't see his black face, but his hands, Jesus, they could tear God from a man's faith. Here, see the bruise he left on my right arm, where his fingers pinched me to a wet wall and wordless worked me over with the other. The yellow stink of the wind and the piss streets that stained his Carhartt turned my stomach. He'd spent enough and shook me free of the remaining sleeve. With a punch to the gut, tore off toward the surface, the coat trailing him into obscurity. He took what he could, a phone, my wallet, my history. But now every naked street is an alley, and the names of the saints and avenues refuse me. Strange faces stare back from the coinage. Bread sinks in my stomach like stones, and no one stopped. 2 fairies in the underground, grown men in the throes. Who would drive an axe through this modern love? Order, here we are. Following that, I'd like to read you a prose poem, or some other such abomination. I don't know if this exists or not, but I've written one, so I think I have the right to claim that it does.
That's right.
It's something of a similar vein, sort of like a story, taking place under certain similar circumstances. The last poem in the subway for the N train downtown, and this one now imagined from another speaker's perspective, someplace else perhaps in the bowels of Manhattan down there, in the subway system. Dead weight. It's okay, he assures me, as I hold the slick, hefty bag open to its shovel. It was born down here, and couldn't have known the difference. There's a gravelly sound, then a swoosh, as its weight sinks to the bottom. I'm resisting the urge to vomit through the cloud of flies, or notarize my load with a Christian name. Neither would be professional. To our left, the concrete walls square off with the ceiling, and continue, as planned, into the miles of humid whir and chink. Dead weight, he smiles. His headlamp falls on the contents of the bag, lights for a moment the blood-dried hair, a still open eye. God knows how many are down here. He leans on the shovel. Dust falls on everything. From the mouth of the tunnel, a red light stares back at us. It means the next train is being held as a courtesy. How I came to be here, and for what purpose, I no longer know. I'm alone at the center of this machine, and when I call out, my voice will echo and confirm the worst, its vastness, its vacancy. All right, let's lighten things up a bit. Right? Let's get down to something more enjoyable. So, just to kind of prove, I guess I'm capable of other thoughts. Here's a poem, another imagined scenario, very much in a different vein. I suppose the scenario being an elderly couple, one perhaps who's now disabled, requires assistance, and the rest is, I suppose, explained in the poem. That's all you need to know. It's called The Bath. Sounds more fun. The Bath. Sounds right. It took 2 of us, his wife and I, to hoist the hull of his bare ass into the steaming bathwater, drenching our legs past the knee in lavender foam and oil, careful not to scrape the sides against a narrow berth, where like ropes his hairy arms angled over either flank, and his exposed sex buoyed on the incensed surf. Behind the door, I watched the grass from the hall window turn from blue to green, under the first white embers of dawn, as she scrubbed the sobering suds against his chest, and weightless, he floated in her arms. Okay. As Norman said, in Norman's introduction, that there's some common theme in his poems or some motif that seems to string them together. The only thing, for the life of me, that I can seem to see, aside from all this morbidity, is this strange fascination I seem to have with other people's body. I don't know, not in a sexual way. I can't get over it. I just think and I think, but no. What I mean by that is, well, I guess it's explained in this poem. It's called Complicado, and it comes from a friend of mine was telling me a story about her grandfather or father or someone. Well, she'll see this and then yell at me and tell me who it was. His famous line in the family was always, "Let me live my life." You know, always the wife was on his, yelling at him to do something, and he didn't want to do it, so he would just say, "Let me live my life." So that resonated. The Spanish resonated with me, so this is where that poem comes from. To think I was born a boy, and will by likely causes perish in plain clothes, wearing my father's face, never knowing what it is to be a woman, whose secrets have eluded me, like the interior life of an orange. I want long hair and nails that can cut glass. I want late nights and a guitar by the Rhone. Don't lecture me on the mechanics of the heart. I've seen those markets full of vegetables with their litany of color. I know I can never be a convincing ghost. Let me live my life. Okay, flipping around here, excuse me. I'd like to read one now about New Jersey, actually, getting out of New York and out of other people's bodies and headspace and into back here home. Some of the images, the sort of genre of photography and writing about all the disaster. Like, I know that there's a very popular book about Detroit, of all the photographs of all the buildings crumbling, and people saying that those are our homes, what are you doing? And it's spawning this kind of new, very strange, post-apocalyptic, industrial, gothic aesthetic that's going on. And the same thing happened with Sandy, like the hurricane. Of course, within weeks, there were books of photographs already lying out there on the table for you to choose from, of all the pictures, as though it was a kind of morbid celebration. So I had that in mind, and this poem's called After the Flood. After the flood. So it was that water filled the vacancies of the church and public bathrooms, of the free libraries, and to speak of God was an act of pure chemistry, of saturations and fluid ounces, and all talk of time measured in the plumb depth of lost furniture in our highways turned reef. Even the beach had been leveled to mere matter of expression, the property line of the ocean given up after a day's argument, and day restored to day, as the last light roosting on the battered eaves, where like a mill, the Ferris wheel in heights turned, powering darkness on and off. I'm jumping around now. I'm not sticking to the plan. 10 minutes. Oh, good. 10 minutes. Excellent. I have a crutch now. I know how long I've been up here for. Okay. This next poem is called Safe Word, which should make you uncomfortable a little bit, I suppose, because it has nothing to do with the poem. That's sort of one of the funny things about poems. I guess you start in one place, you end up in a complete other. Like a night in New York, I suppose. You get drunk, you walk around a little bit. You have to find your way through all the receipts in your pocket. So here's a safe word. How we got here, I don't know. Forgive me if you've heard this all before, but I don't know who else now to turn to, so I'm coming to you. I don't trust myself anymore. Not anymore like this, standing inches apart, arranged in a chemical compound for sadness, for not touching the filigree of your hair when it stabs me in the nose, with its expensive ideas about revolution, about fecundity. I can't trust myself in elevators, especially in the theater of 14th Street, not to ruin your blue blouse weeping on your shoulder when the hero is gunned down and the credits don't even mention us. I can't carry on this way. It's not becoming to wear a suit of glass. I'll behave. I'll be anyone. I'll be the pregnant waitress, and you can be alimony, or the archangel who washes dishes from Guatemala. I'll be Teflon, Xerox, lymphoma. I'll be bourbon in the Hyatt lobby, $12 in paradise in your guts. All this pretense is exhausting. At least the shovel knows the blind ecstasy of dirt. I dig and dig, but there's only ever more of me in this wilderness of rooms to inherit. And pretty soon I'll say I'm 12 o'clock when the doorman asks my name. Why can't I have peace? Like the house of the Bulgarian Communist Party, where no one comes to visit or argue the price of potatoes. I'm done. I'm spent. I'm closing my official doors. I'll behave. I'll be anybody. I'll be anonymous. I'll be just like you. Just a few more. Just a few more. Say that often, don't we? Just a few more. I'm done. Just a few more of these and I'm done. This next poem is called Viewmaster. I'll speed things up a little bit. It's sort of inspired by that children's toy, the little red thing that probably most of us in this room are familiar with. It has a wheel and you turn it and there's some celluloid image in color, right? Am I getting this right? Something like that. And like a very cheap set of binoculars that don't work very well. It'll show you the same images over and over again. Viewmaster. In those days, nothing was clear. It was hard to know whether the men who whispered, "Hey boss," as you passed thinking about bees, were soliciting your ass, or if they only wanted to beat you in 3 swift moves at chess. Whether to be in love with the Super 8 dyed cabs, or to run for our fucking lives into the green hills of the future. My friends made cameos pressed between the frame of my family's 19-inch Zenith, chanting or crying beneath their gold public beards, somewhere where bombs were falling, in a country I can't pronounce. This was back when the TV guide was polite and didn't list the executions. We walked out into that silence, holding hands in stainless steel dreaming, the way you do a field where a house stood, the way you do into a universe hungry, expanding. I rode a bicycle then and was brave. I hadn't yet learned the real name for clock was moon, and still dimly thought that car meant car and not bison. No one ever corrected me. And so I never saw the Roman numerals when my teacher pointed to the great night sky, with its depot of stars and strange weather. Then, as now, there was only space, empty space. I'll read just one more and be done with it here. And this last poem is, again, as most of these are inspired by some kind of mythology, lie, just something I happened to hear from someone who didn't bother to corroborate the facts in any way. It's based on something I had heard, a fun story about Michelangelo, and if I can find it, I will read it for you. Okay. Very disorganized. Oh, I won't.
Just make it up.
Yeah, make it up. What sounds good to you? No, okay, we won't be going that direction after all, unfortunately. I'll just read you one more then. A poem called Homunculus, which again has a sort of strange origin. Homunculus is this imagined creature that makes its way through literature and of all kinds, Goethe's Faust and Shelley's Frankenstein. You see again and again this figure of the homunculus, the fake man. And then the poem is: if the sperma enclosed in a hermetically sealed glass is buried in horse manure for 40 days, and properly magnetized, it begins to live and move, and after such a time it bears the form and resemblance of a human being. So that's where this poem comes from. Horse manure and the sperma. Okay. Homunculus. Each night when I tire of thunder, or the thunder of moth wings, or the white storm of the moth itself, and kiss your legs for want of apology, lie drawn to the bedposts quartered in ceremony and sheets. But why? Your question stuns, or passes needle-thin through swollen glows of sweat. It delivers me. I am opened up now, opened wide up. The man in white frock and white gloves holds my chest open with pins, and I sense rather than see the excited faces of the theater rising like a red balloon. I am tacked open and talked about, a sort of pornography. Here are the muscles and the liver, and here the heart. Note the dark dwelling place of the homunculus. And here is my love for you. Here its coarse hair and persistent fingernails, and lips like 2 brown bees. I have labored it, a coarse clay child.